to train. There's a small amount that the US OC gives to athletes to help them train along, but it's a paltry sum, and we need to do better by our athletes. It's just not fair. It's simply not fair.
Of course, I mean they're the soul of the whole thing.
They're the product.
Yeah, they're the product. So since we're talking about the Olympics, before going live, we shortly mentioned this case where a transgender athlete won, and apparently there was a huge scandal around it. I didn't follow the whole story through very well. I would like to know if you did, and if you could explain a little bit better for us.
So the two athletes that I'm aware of were both boxers, and they're not transgender. So let me just define this. If you have a transgender person, they're born with one gender. The terminology that we use is gender they were assigned, which I don't agree with because no one assigns anything. You're born with a penis and testicles, or you're born with a vagina, one or the other. But once that happens, and it's typically where we see this is most often is a trans woman. So that means born a male and decides that they're going to live as a female. I am not a proponent of allowing trans females to compete with women. It's not fair. I can go into that forever and ever. In this case, what we had is someone who was born intersex. Now, this is a rare condition in which they are not born with completed sex organs of either gender. It's something that happens within the uterus during development. Now, this particular person was born intersex. Now, what exactly they had and don't have, we just don't know, because there's all this infighting and arguing in terms of what tests they did or did not pass. If someone is born with XX, that is a woman, period. In most instances, an intersex woman is not quite big enough to be considered a male because of the musculature that they have, but they have more musculature than does a female. So they will almost always go down into the female category. I shouldn't say down, over into the female category. But in most instances, those people are XY. I think it was the IBF, the International Boxing Federation, was the one who was in charge of boxing for the Olympics until this big old thing came up. And then the IOC kicked them out, and they went with like the Paris Boxing Association, something really small. So the IBF said that this person failed their gender test. They were XY. There was a bunch of people who said that's not true. That's not what happened. And so the Paris Boxing Federation passed this person, said they passed their gender test. They're good to go. They can box. This is much different than what we're talking about with trans athletes. Trans athletes are born males, period. They are male. Once they go through male puberty, they have absolute physiological advantages over women, period. It doesn't matter how much estrogen you pump into them. It doesn't matter how many testosterone blockers you pump into them. Once puberty has happened, those things are going to be there, and they're going to be there for good. They're taller. They have more muscle mass. They have bigger hands, longer arms, longer legs, bigger feet, bigger hearts, bigger lung capacity. I could go on and on.
That's a fact.
Okay. That's a fact. Doesn't change. Now, that will decrease some. If you take away testosterone and you put in estrogen, muscle mass will decrease some, but it will not decrease all the way down to the point where they would be considered an equivalent female within their ranks. So if you had the fifth-ranked male cyclist in the world that decided that they wanted to become a woman, and they go through the entire process of transitioning to a woman. Once they transition over here, they're going to be number one. So let me change those numbers because that didn't make any sense. Let's say you had the 2000th ranked male, and then they transition. They're not going to become the 2000th ranked female. They're going to be in the top 10. That's just the way it is. Okay, and I can back this up with data from other people who we've seen within the United States. The most prominent one would be Leah Thomas, who started her life off as William Thomas and swam for the University of Pennsylvania men's swim team for 3 years, then went through a year off while she transitioned, and I'll call her she, I'll be respectful of that, to competing with the females. Leah was the 1,030th ranked 100 freestyle swimmer in NCAA for men. When she transitioned over to a woman, 13. That can't happen. That's absurd. And everybody who believes in science can look at that and know that that's just not fair. Now, if that process of that transition went from 1,030 to somewhere around 1,030, fine. But that's not what happens. So that part is something that's been pretty well agreed upon, at least on the international scene. That's not going to happen. What I think needs to happen there is that we need to have a non-binary division for these folks to go into and compete. They need to have a space in sports. I'm not interested in kicking out anybody from sports. I'm too much of a sports fan, and I know the benefits that it can have in your life beyond physiology. Emotionally, community-wise, you need to be able to participate, but you have to have your own division. So that's my diatribe on that. But this other person, this is much stickier, because they're not born male or female. They're somewhere in between. And you're asking a whole lot of people to just say, you can no longer participate until you get a surgery to remove these undescended testicles, or we knock down your testosterone levels. It's really, really complicated. But what we need more than anything else is complete transparency. If these folks want to compete with women, they have to be transparent about what they're packing downstairs and what their genetic code is. They just have to be. And I know it's invasive, and I know it takes away their privacy, but so does everything related to doping. All of these doping tests that people have to take out of season, they show up at any hour of the day that they want, any place that they want. You have to tell them where you're going to be at all hours of every day, whether you're on vacation or going to the doctor's office or anything else. And if you don't do so, that's the same as testing positive for doping. So if we're going to hold our, I'm not going to use the word cis because I don't agree with it. Are we going to hold our male and female athletes to that standard of privacy violations? It shouldn't be any different for an intersex athlete who wants to prove that they belong.
Yeah, just create a new division for them. Why not?
I agree.
Yeah,
I completely agree.
Because one thing's for sure, I think we can all agree that we want to have fairness in sport. We all want to compete in a fair space, so we have chances of winning. That's for sure. So, and
as fair as we can make it. Let me